Welcome back to the Just Show Up show. I don't know why, but like, not every time, but almost every time that I do this, it's a bit of a internal struggle because I notice that I want to show up like all like, like I want to show up like cheerful and like with something interesting to say, and I think like that's kind of the topic of this week. The topic of this week is actually perfectionism. And whenever I heard this word in the past, I thought, that's not me. For sure not. I'm definitely not a perfectionist. Like, clearly, look at my life. Like, if I was a perfectionist, things would be a little bit more perfect, right? So that's kind of how I understood. My nose is a bit itchy. I think it must have to do with these beautiful flowers. They're waning a little bit right now, but they were beautiful while they lasted, which also kind of falls in line with the topic. So how did I get to this topic? I started reading a book called How to Be an Imperfectionist, and when I first saw the title, I was just kind of, let's say, intrigued. I was like, let me see what's in that book. And I don't know, man, like as I started reading it, it just kind of felt like these waves of realizations and like just kind of a sudden knowing that that might be like the root cause of like, I wouldn't say like I'm struggling right now in my life. Like, I definitely can't say that I'm struggling. Like, everything is kind of fine, but I think we always want more, right? Like, I think like I kind of aspire, like I am trying to find a good balance between aspiring to what I want is a very smooth and like easeful life. Like, I'm just dreaming of this life where I only do the things that I really want to do. I'm only doing like passion projects. I get to travel whenever I want to travel. I get to see the things that I want to see. Like, I want to create a life for myself where everything is so aligned and where I am able to show up, where I'm able to be myself. And that's the other part of the struggle. I feel like the more that I've started to kind of like show up, and this, for example, like being on camera, I've practiced this for 2 fucking years. I've been recording things for 2 years and always kind of thinking like, okay, yes, like I want to put it up, but like I'm not quite sure. And just kind of, I think like, I don't know what I was dreading. Like, I think that at the beginning, I felt like, oh my God, like nothing that I'm saying is interesting enough. There's no structure. It's all over the place. And I think like in general, just that fear of like, it's not interesting enough. It's not good enough. It's not like, I don't know, just like not enough. Like, why are we, I mean, and then that's the other thing that I wonder sometimes. It's like, how many people are actually struggling with this? Because like my general perception is that like the vast majority of people are struggling with not feeling good enough, like not feeling accomplished enough. And even when you talk to people who really do have a lot, it's like, it's just never enough. Like, there's always more that we want, right? And like, even when you are financially stable and like you have your business in place or whatever, you still always feel like, I don't know, like maybe it's some kind of like existential dread, like existential kind of fear of like losing it all. Or I know also people who maybe like they have everything together financially. Most people I would say struggle with relationships, and that is one thing where I feel very blessed. And I feel like, oh my God, like, okay, maybe there's certain other areas where I feel like I could kind of be happier, let's say, but like at least in the relationship part, everything feels so harmonious and so peaceful. So that's like, I try to be grateful. I think like, I don't know, it's just such a balancing act of I think that's the other thing, like where kind of being an HSP, you see, like this is my just like my natural state of being, is like my mind just like goes into like 18 different directions at the same time, and it's like creating all of these connections, which sometimes that's like a very useful function of my brain, but when I'm trying to kind of express myself, sometimes it's really all over the place. So coming back, yeah, I feel like the last week I've been kind of processing a lot of different things, like going deeper into reading The Highly Sensitive Person, and then also kind of diving deep into this How to Be an Imperfectionist book. And what came up for me is that I realized, like, for example, I have this horrible habit of, if I don't know how to do something, I'll just put it off. Like, I'll be like, I don't know how to do this, I'm not doing it. And it's just like, I'll shut the book, like I just won't do it. And then I'll be procrastinating, and like there's very few, it's like a specific category of its own of things that I'm procrastinating, and usually it has to do with things that, like, if I have to define myself, if I have to summarize, that's just so incredibly hard for me. Like, I feel like, so I've been trying to create a description of my coaching, and I've been trying to do that for probably a good 3 months or 2 months, which is a ridiculously long period of time to spend on like a basic ass description. And the reason why I spent so much time on it is that I wanted to be able to capture it all. And I think like that's my general struggle in life, like I want to capture it all, like, but then my perception of the so-called all is so complex and so rich in detail, and like I feel like I don't know what to prioritize. And then actually, like last week I was doing a drawing exercise where it was like speed drawing, and you would have to draw a scene in 15 minutes, 10 minutes, and 5 minutes, and it was, oh my god, it was like the world's most stressful experience, because I just don't know how to prioritize like what is important and what is not important in the image. And I was like, shit, I need to kind of like figure out how to simplify things. Like, and even now, like right as I'm saying this, I'm feeling so fucking embarrassed of the struggle. Like I'm just like endlessly embarrassed about, I don't know, I just feel like my whole life I've just kind of been like doing so much inner work and so much self-help and so much healing modalities, and then like it just still, I mean, obviously there's like a kind of general sense of well-being, but then it's like, it's kind of like as if you had like your house in perfect order, but then there's like, I don't know, like a couple of corners with like sticky jam that you just kind of can't wipe away. And I guess like that, like, I guess like the last part of the work is just kind of like embracing life and like accepting that it's messy. And I think like that's what this book, How to Be an Imperfectionist, is kind of really communicating to me. And it's like, yeah, you just have to kind of accept that life is not perfect. Like life is not, you can't always do everything the right way. You can't always do everything perfectly. And like, you're gonna fuck up. You're gonna make mistakes. And I think like I've always been extremely unwilling to make mistakes. And like, unless I know how to do something exactly the right way, like I'm not even gonna attempt doing it. Or so I think like the last couple of years I've been really trying to like kind of, not, I wouldn't say push myself, because I feel like that's like too violent and too aggressive, but I've been trying to create like some kind of like safe space bubbles in my own kind of either journaling or in my art practice, where I can just kind of sit down and be like, okay, no one's watching. You don't have to show this to anyone. Like, just do something bad, you know, like just do something bad for the sake of it. And actually, like, I read that very famous artists, they have a separate room in their studio where, like, it's locked away, like they don't show it to anyone, but they have a room where they make bad art, like purposefully really bad stuff, like bad ideas. And I also heard, I think the Rolling Stones, they used to meet once a week to make purposefully bad music. Like, they would try to write bad songs just to kind of get it out of their system, and just to kind of you know, like, not be a perfectionist. Because if you're constantly demanding of yourself to only produce masterpieces, and to only ever like be interesting, and to only ever, you know, like like, I don't know, I don't even know what it is that we're demanding of ourselves. It's just such an annoying habit. And then the interesting thing about this book was that it was kind of, no, so actually, like, the combination of these two books, reading HSP, like highly sensitive person, and reading How to Be an Imperfectionist at the same time, it just created this kind of cross-pollination effect between these two books, where highly sensitive person was talking also about perfectionism, and about how if you've grown up around, like, as a highly sensitive person, around a very critical parent, then like in my case, for example, like what I kind of discovered by reading the books together, and like really reflecting on it, like, okay, like, first of all, I never considered myself a perfectionist before this, and then secondly, I wouldn't even know how to explain, like, where does this come from, because I don't feel like my attitude in life, like, I would say my attitude in life is like kind of adventure and like experimental. Like, it's definitely not perfectionist. So my inner soul drive is definitely towards, like, away from perfection, full on. But then there is like almost this other opposing force inside me that like wants to control everything. And then actually this week I had this idea that I've had for a comic, and I've had like the kind of the title and the cover. That idea came to me like a long time ago, and it's basically like, you know, a modern day hedonist, you know, like with grapes and just kind of like doing nothing. And like, I've always found this idea really interesting, because we live in a world where it's like productivity is worshipped, and like we almost feel guilty about rest. And I feel like, I don't know, like I feel like in popular media there's just very little material that explores the idea of hedonism, you know, and of like anarchy. And so I've kind of come up with this like very exaggerated character of like a nudist anarchist hedonist that is just kind of like instant gratification, isn't freaking bothered with anything, because I feel like that's like my two inner characters that are kind of constantly like battling with each other. Like, one is this like nudist that like refuses to even put on clothes, like it's just like anti everything. It's like, I won't cooperate, like I only do whatever I want, like I'm not gonna even like forget it, you're not gonna get anything out of me. And then the other character is this kind of like business boss lady that is just almost like a kind of domina, you know, dominatrix, like with a whip that's just kind of going around and like trying to talk some sense into this like hedonist who just won't cooperate. And like this hedonist version of me literally just wants to like take baths, eat, go to the forest, like do yoga, which is like a surprising like physical activity, you know, make love, stay in bed, read, you know, like do art, like find things in life, like nothing stressful. And it's like just pure pleasure, which is like, why can't we, right? Like, I mean, I understand, like I'm a rational human being, and I understand that we need to have both, right? Like you need to have, but I feel like, you know, like the way that modern life is designed for most people nowadays is like you work 9 to 5, like most people, right? And like most people, they spend an hour going to work, and maybe that's changing, you know, not now with like working from home, but like that would be like 10 hours if you'd spend an hour going to work and an hour coming back, and then like you still have to cook on top of that, and like there's so much maintenance that goes into just like surviving, and there's so little time left to hedonize. And then when you are actually doing it, it's like, you know, you're not really like enjoying it. Like there's not very much pleasure going on in life. And I feel like there's something in me that's just kind of like keeping that dream alive. Like there's just, I don't know, there's like some kind of vision of like the Garden of Eden like lives in me. and it's very rebellious. It's like very resistant to being controlled, and it's very resistant to this boss lady character who just kind of comes in and like pushes that other one, you know, around, and it's like alarmed and like freaked out, and it's like, you're not gonna survive in this world, like you can't just live like this, like this is not possible, you know, like you need to make money, like get your lazy ass up. And it's just like, whoa, like what's going on, you know? Like there's these just two really extreme opposites who are just not friends. So that's one thing that I've been really working on this week, is like kind of looking at these, like they're almost like roommates, like living in this like mental house. And it's like, how do I get these two to kind of like either learn to live with each other and like not hate each other, or just come to some kind of consensus, or like develop a system where they can, you know, cohabitate happily. Like, yeah, I'm like, okay. Because I think like until now, I was always kind of mildly aware of these characters in my mind, but I've never really like fully explored it. So another very interesting thing that's happening recently is that me and 3 other buddies from my coaching training program are collaborating on making a workshop, and the theme is around self-love, which is definitely like my kind of central topic in life. Like I definitely really like the idea of self-love, and I think everything kind of stems from self-love. Like, what did I say? Yeah, we were all defining like what self-love means for each of us, and I said that for me, self-love is being the one person in your life that really cares about your dreams. And I feel like for me, it's like, I feel like the purpose of life, for me at least, it's like living your dreams, or like kind of that hero's journey of like walking definitely in the direction of your dreams, and kind of, you know, like creating the life that you just know feels right to you, you know, like you like you're in your element, you know, like you're doing the things that you're really meant to be doing. And I personally really know that difference in the feeling when I'm like, okay, like for example, like my last experience as a flight attendant for 3 years, which is like, I don't know, I think like I wanted to stay there for 3 years. I definitely wanted to have that experience, and I wanted to travel, and I had so many places that I wanted to see, but and also like just generally as an experience of like doing that job, and like it's so eventful and so many different things happen, and to learn how to engage with people and like strangers, and that's another thing. Like when I first started that job, fuck my life, like I was so self-conscious. I was just constantly worried, like, oh my god, like are they gonna like me, you know, like am I gonna say the right things, like, you know, do I sound lame, and like really self-conscious. And thank God doing that job was really good for me. So I think that's the other thing, like that's the message of the How to Be an Imperfectionist book, is like everything in life is about action. It's like if you are just not so much concerned with like concepts and thinking about doing it, but like actually doing it, and like repeated consistent action, change is like inevitable, right? So like if I had been thinking, you know, for years and years about like, oh my god, like how can I be less self-conscious, it would have never like got me to the same result as just exposing myself to like probably like thousands of people like during that time, and just noticing like, oh, okay, like, well, wow, like nobody gives a shit about me basically. Like nobody cares about like what I say. Like everybody's just concerned with what they're saying, you know, or like it just doesn't even matter that much. Like, you know, who would even be thinking about that? So yeah, now I gotta live it lost, but that's what's been going on in my mind. So yeah, back to the workshop. I was kind of thinking like, I think that's my direction in general. It's like your relationship with yourself, like changing the relationship to yourself. Like that's been something that I've been journaling and thinking about for a very, very long time. It's like, how do we, you know, because I feel like we internalize all of these external voices. So for me, all of this perfectionism, you know, and like it all comes so much from my parents. So I've been thinking very much about this. Like I'm actually going to stay with my parents soon for like a long time, like 2 months or so, maybe like a month or two, and it is unavoidable. Like I kind of have to do it, and I'm really dreading it because I feel like Thich Nhat Hanh was actually talking about that. He was like, your parents are not outside of you, like your parents are in you. And I feel like everything that I struggle with inside myself, like perfectionism, worry about the future, and like negativity, like all of these, whenever I see my parents and like how they think, and like, oh my god, I just like, it drives me nuts because I see the parts of myself that I really, really want to like cure and like get out of my system. Like they just remind me so much of them, and like it really kind of triggers a lot of things for me. And I'm like, God, like could you just stop being so negative? Because it's like I feel like even like a kind of like the slightest bit of negativity in my own thinking just annoys me, because I'm like, God, like that's so unconstructive, like, or stop being whiny, stop, you know. And then when I reflect on that again, I'm like, Jesus fucking Christ, like that's so unkind, you know. And I think like the voices that we've been hearing as kids, you know, like this is not good enough, like for example like grades, you know, like I always had to have perfect grades, and like my mom was like obsessed with cleaning, like everything had to be like perfectly clean and perfectly like tidy, and if it can't even just be like tidy, but it has to be tidy in the perfect right way, and it's like there's only one right way of doing everything. I'm like, oh my god, like so I think like even as I was growing up, there was always this like rebellious side that just was like, no, like if you want me to be tidy, I'm gonna be like the messiest possible version. And I think the last 10 years of me being an adult, you know, and like not living at home anymore and not being in that environment that kind of created all of these patterns of behavior, just made me realize like, whoa, like wait a second, like I need to recalibrate this, you know, like I need to create some harmony, you know, like in these voices, because like obviously some amount of discipline is good, and I don't want to just be messy out of like rebellion towards my parents. Okay, I got cut off, that's fine. Okay, so my lowest version is super whiny, super helpless, like super like, yeah, like just victim mode, and like just low on energy, doesn't want to do anything. It's just like, someone come and save me. Like I'm just like in this like completely like annoying state of like just yeah, I think like very infantile and like young. Like there's something very young and like childlike that is just waiting for someone to come and like rescue me and like take over my life. and I get very, very easily discouraged. Like, oh my God, I'm like, goodness, like, could you just like toughen up a little bit? Like, seriously, like, you can't just get discouraged at like anything. I'm like so sensitive to criticism, so sensitive to like things not working out. And that's also like where this whole idea of like being an imperfectionist comes in, is like you need to, so he's saying like, have high expectations in terms of like how your life is gonna pan out. Like, definitely expect that like things are gonna go well in general, like in the long run, but lower your freaking expectations for like small micro moments in life. So like, you know, if I'm like, for example, like I want to make the first page of illustration for my book, I need to severely lower my expectations from that. And like another thing that I've noticed is, for example, like I'll want to create something, like I'll want to create like an essay, an article, like a post, whatever, and I just expect it to be perfect and right first shot. Like it's like so unrealistic, and then I'll be like putting it off, and like there'll be like almost like a month between like the first draft and the second attempt and then the third attempt. And it's like, if I could just consolidate that and put first attempt, second attempt, third attempt into one day, like I could have it finished like so much faster, right? And I could have so much more stuff being done that way if my bloody expectations were not that high. So I'm just finding this book super, super helpful, and I'm finding it super interesting, and it's informing my other ideas that I've had around kind of creating a workshop like that, that would just kind of go in and explore and like maybe like create characters out of these like different sides of ourselves that we have, like a higher self, lower self, maybe, you know, like maybe like kind of just explore like who are these voices, for example, you know, like the critical voices, like where do they come from, and just kind of give them a face so that we know what's going on. Because I feel like so much of the struggle and the battle that goes on in our heads is also like not knowing what's going on, right? Like, and being so scared of it. It's like you're scared of the shadow that looks like a monster, but then when you look at it, it's like nothing, like it's fine. And I think that's like the part that is happening there, is just like integration. Like the whole point of it is just how do we accept all of that, right? And like how do we integrate, and how do we not have shame? Like when I started this video, I was just like, oh my God, I'm so ashamed to like admit all of this stuff. And now that I've said it, it's so healing, and it's so like purifying in a way. It's like I feel like my whole system has been purified, and I feel like every time when I am scared of showing up and you know, like presenting myself, I'm like, you know, I think that's also the fear that people have in general of like showing up and being visible and being public and occupying space, is that they're so scared, and me included, is that, oh my God, like my lowest self is gonna come out, right? Like I'm not gonna be showing anything good, and like then people are not gonna like me, and like everybody's gonna think I'm lame, and you know, and it's just so bad, because I feel like our personality fluctuates, right? Like maybe like I start the video with like, you know, like my lower self is still like really like traces of it are still there, and that's like mostly what's kind of in my energy field also. Like I definitely feel it like energetically. It's like, whoa, like I'm low, or like I'm just like, oh God, like not feeling it. But then as soon as, that's the other idea in the book, is like as soon as you start action, it's like action creates the good feelings that we're after. It's not like you need to first feel good and then do the action, right? Like if I was first waiting to feel good, and this is very funny because like every time when I record these videos, it's fucking Wednesday afternoon. Like unless there's like some like grand moment of inspiration like before that, like I put everything off until the very last minute, until there's no excuse left anymore, and I just have to do it, because like if I don't do it now, it's just not gonna be done. And like I am committed to doing these videos for 2 fucking years. I'm gonna do them for 2 years just to kind of challenge myself and to test it out, to see like, okay, if I don't give up on something, like maybe something can actually come out of it. And I've been feeling called to this for, like, as I said, 2 years, and it's just so horrible. Like, when you're feeling called to something and you just don't allow it to happen because of fucking perfectionism, because it's like not good enough, like not smart enough, I don't have any ideas, like I don't know what I'm gonna talk about, right? Like, it's the most annoying thing. So this was a perfect demonstration of everything that's going on in my head last week, and I think we've reached the end. So let me know. I would actually really appreciate some comments after this video if you've made it to the end, or like even like somewhere in between or whatever. Like, let me, I mean, obviously you'd have to come to the end to hear this message. Okay, anyways, if you're here, do let me know like what you think about these, you know, like these two different sides, you know, like kind of, and the idea of the workshop. Like, does that sound interesting? Whatever, like, let me know. I would really appreciate getting some feedback on this, because it's definitely happening. So I would appreciate feedback. Thank you. And I'll see you next week. If you want to connect or you want to coach with me, I'll link my website down below, and I will see you again soon. Bye.